We got a big bombshell when it comes to the NFL coaching carousel. We will get to that in a moment. Plus, Adam Schefter updates everyone on all 5 open vacancies. And let's start with the big one, the news of the day. Philip Rivers, as we speak, is interviewing for the Buffalo Bills head coaching vacancy. And remember a few weeks ago, I think Rappaport had the report of teams have done their homework on Philip Rivers, and then a few weeks went by, no one's interviewed him according to reports. Like, okay. Well, today, Adam Schefter drops the news that Philip Rivers, former Colts QB twice, and high school football coach at St. Michael Catholic in Alabama, is interviewing to be the next Bills head coaching job. And look, I don't know if it would work or not. It would be incredible if it happened, especially for people like me who create content. I would love to see it. He's very well connected. He clearly knows the game well. The fact that he can get off the couch at about 275 and still look formidable as a quarterback at 44 years old, I think speaks just to the intelligence of the game that he has. And look, I know it's high school, but like he's at least been in it, right? Like he's coaching, he's watching the NFL, all that stuff. That being said, this would be a unique situation, right? You play for almost 20 years, you go coach your son for 4 or 5 years, and then, you come out of retirement, play a month of ball, and you're getting head coach interviews in the NFL. That's quite the twist if this ends up playing out. I mean, I would say the fact that he's even getting a look is quite the twist. Schefter had this to say regarding Rivers and the Bills. He said, "My understanding is that Philip Rivers was ready to go for this interview. Rivers doesn't do anything without being thoroughly prepared. I'm going to be really surprised if he doesn't wow them in the interview. Now, are they going to hire him? I have no idea how Brian Dable, Joe Brady, Davis Webb, and some of these other candidates are going to do." Well, I think you always take this with a grain of salt when head coaching odds come out. He's the second favorite right now, behind Brian Dable. Joe Brady, the current OC who's getting a look, is down at plus 700, and then you have Clint Kubiak, Davis Webb, Mike McDaniel, who's verbally agreed to be the Chargers OC if he doesn't land a head coaching job. They are distant secondary options there. Diana Rossini added this. The Bills met with candidates in Orchard Park, but they flew to Florida to meet with Mike McDaniel today, Anthony Lynn, Anthony Weaver Saturday, Grant Udinski on Sunday. One constant in every single interview, Josh Allen is sitting in for everything, which I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's one thing to keep your star quarterback in the loop. Hey, here's a few takeaways from the interview with Mike McDaniel. Here's this, here's that. I don't know if he belongs in that room. I think that kind of speaks to I don't know. Is it a lack of trust in your leaders that make these decisions? I think it's a little overkill. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think he should be kept in the loop. And if there's a specific question on something from one of these candidates to ask him, okay. But to have him in these meetings, I personally do not love. But I do think it does speak to if he has a real seat at the table, could Rivers have a chance? He helped Josh Allen prepare for the NFL draft back in 2018. They seem to have a relationship. Now, obviously, he has a big relationship with Brian Dable, too, who appears to be the favorite for this job. But I would not rule this out for Philip Rivers and the Buffalo Bills, especially in a coaching cycle where if Brian Dable's the favorite, I know he coached Josh Allen, but not like it went that well in New York. So I think there's at least a chance this happens. Who should the Bills hire as their next head coach? Let me know down in the comment section below. I personally think if you're going to get rid of Sean McDermott, bringing back Brian Dable's kind of uninspiring. I would just go in a whole new direction, but we'll see if that's what they end up doing. Okay, we have updates on all other vacancies coming up here in just a moment. But first, got to tell you guys about our awesome sponsor. That is Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than on Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. You can also take advantage of their new feature, Early Payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. A Prize Picks lineup is simple. You pick 2 or more players, take more or less on their stat projections. We're talking passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, points, rebounds, assists in basketball, goals, assists in soccer, soccer and hockey, and a whole lot more. Pick 2 up to 6 players, and if you hit, you win money. It's as simple as that. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use our code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, Adam Schefter kind of just went through the different vacancies right now on the Pat McAfee show today. We just talked about the Bills situation. Let's hit on these other jobs. He talked about the Browns vacancy and said this on McAfee, quote, "It seems like the Browns are looking at one of these young offensive minds, whether that's Jaguars OC Grant Udinski or Rams passing game coordinator Nathan Scheelhaase or Jim Schwartz, who's currently the DC. If you want to keep that defensive continuity, you got to keep Jim Schwartz and make him the head coach." I think he's almost making the point that he's probably going to take a different DC job if you don't make him the head coach. I would take the swing on Udinski or Scheelhaase. I'm not promoting Jim Schwartz the head coach if I'm the Browns, because if you do, in 24 months, you're probably in the same position. I like Jim Schwartz a lot as a defensive coordinator. I've said it on this show. Offer him $5-6 million to be one of, if not the highest paid DC in the league, and say, hey, we're going with one of these young offensive minds. We value you can really help him out, and we will pay you like a low-end head coach. And if he says no and goes elsewhere, so be it. You don't promote Jim Schwartz if you are the Cleveland Browns. I would go with Udinski. I would go with Scheelhaase. Whoever impresses me more, I would pick that guy. I would try to convince Schwartz to stay, but if he goes, then so be it. But that is the avenue I would take if I was Cleveland. Okay, the Arizona Cardinals, which it's been kind of quiet around who they potentially could land in Arizona. Schefter threw out 3 names that he's been hearing a lot. Anthony Campanelli, who's gotten a second interview with Arizona. Rams OC Mike LaFleur, who doesn't call plays but is Sean McVay's offensive coordinator. And then Raheem Morris, who just got fired by the Atlanta Falcons. I got to be honest, that would be pretty uninspiring, as is this entire list, but I don't think the Cardinals is that appealing to candidates. Michael Bidwell is a really cheap owner. He's not going to pay top dollar for a coach. There's a lot of better jobs available. So, like, if I were them, I would maybe hold out and try to get Clint Kubiak, who's also in the mix in Vegas. But, yeah, I think they're just going to kind of end up with one of these random names. And it probably won't work because it's the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, the Las Vegas Raiders next up. Obviously, got the number 1 pick. Will likely draft Fernando Mendoza. Tom Brady's involved in their search. They were close-ish on Jesse Minter, it sounds like, but the Ravens ended up getting him. He's going to choose Baltimore over Vegas. Here's what Schefter had to say on the Raiders. He said, "I think in a perfect world, the Raiders would like a young offensive mind to shepherd along Fernando Mendoza as your quarterback. Davis Webb would fit in Vegas, but Davis Webb might be the play in Buffalo. I think it's going to be Kubiak or Webb in Vegas. If they can get Kubiak, I think that's who they're going to get, the Seahawks offensive coordinator. If they can't, they're probably going to pivot to Davis Webb, who they've seen in this division, who's quickly risen up the ranks under Sean Payton in Denver. I think they want to go offense, which I agree with if you're going to draft Fernando Mendoza, which clearly they are, and it just comes down to which coach you get. In terms of Clint Kubiak, Davis Webb, or somebody else. Maybe they look at a Nate Scheelhaase. Doesn't sound like they're looking at a Mike McCarthy or someone like that, but we'll have to wait and see. And then lastly, the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 names Schefter has mentioned for that job. Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, they seem to really like him. Anthony Weaver, former Ravens and Dolphins defensive coordinator, and then former Cowboys and Packers head coach Mike McCarthy is in the mix there as well. A Pittsburgh native, grew up there. His dad owned a restaurant there, I think, growing up. He's always had an affinity for that job. He interviewed and apparently has impressed throughout the process. I don't love the direction of this search. Weaver has had mixed results as a DC. Sounds like he's a great leader, but that's still a big leap to be the Steelers head coach. Chris Shula's fine. I think like Brian Flores would have been better, but maybe they did not like how that interview went. And I think Mike McCarthy is like a B minus, but he's in his 60s. Like, that's kind of underwhelming for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would love that for the Arizona Cardinals or the Tennessee Titans, who hired Robert Saleh, but I don't love it for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So their search has kind of been underwhelming. Nate Scheelhaase, I think, could still be in the mix. He reportedly interviewed very well there also. I'd almost rather do that if I was the Steelers, but a little bit of an unknown at this point in time. All right, so we're down to 5 head coaching openings: the Arizona Cardinals, Buffalo Bills, Cleveland Browns, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. You guys let me know, what do you think is the best job available? I think Buffalo with Josh Allen is going to be pretty tough to beat, but Pittsburgh historically is good as well. Get your thoughts down in the comments below. My name is Harrison Graham. Hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Snow all over the country, so stay safe out there if you're driving around. We'll be back with more content soon, so hit that subscribe button.